Tonight, the race against time to extinguish wildfires burning across France and Spain. More than 360,000 people have fled their homes as experts warn the blazes could continue for months.
We are faced with a never-seen-before fire. We have a situation today which is the most difficult we have ever measured since the Second World War.
The most painful expression of the climate emergency. That's how Spain's Prime Minister has described the rapid spread. Lush vegetation that sprung up after an unusually wet winter has now dried into tinder. So what can firefighters do ahead of another blistering heat wave this week? We'll discuss that tonight. And after settler attacks and Israeli raids, Israel's Prime Minister is criticised after violence flared in the West Bank. Shock and anger in Berlin after it emerged the man who attacked the city's Pride Festival had recently been released from prison. Plus, they could soon be extradited to the UK to face rape charges. Find out what happened at the Tate brothers' latest court hearing in Miami, coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. They're fleeing by boat and on foot, sleeping in school halls and cars. Across Spain and France, hundreds of thousands are seeking shelter as wildfires rage. The scenes are apocalyptic. Flames as far as the eyes can see. Grey, smouldering cinders left behind after the fires sweep through. 115,000 hectares have been burnt in France so far this year. That's an area 11 times the size of Paris. And across the continent, several areas are still ablaze. Firefighters are racing to contain them, with another heat wave expected later this week.
We are powerless today. It has eaten everything in its path. It has invaded us completely. It has eaten all our forest heritage. It's moving, so we are forced to do what we can.
I'm very tired. I find all the solidarity from the farmers, the surrounding businesses, and those who came from very far away, very moving. The firefighters and the military, the work they do, put themselves in danger for us. That is incredible.
Well, this is a fire cloud. It's never been seen over Europe before. The fires in southern France have become so severe, they're generating their own weather system, which could cause thunderstorms and lightning strikes. We'll have more on the science behind that coming up. But let's get started with a report from Sadia Chaudhry, who's in the Gironde region.
If you're wondering why French authorities are cutting down trees when so many have already burnt, this is a fire break, a gap in the trees to cut off fuel supply. It slows down the fire, reduces the intensity. It is an invisible line of defense.
The fire is heading straight here, but this is one of the smartest ways to try and contain it. It reaches 15 kilometers in that direction.
Hundreds of trees that have stood here for 30 years, sacrificed to save millions of others.
We cut the forest so that it protects this strip that is going to be created, protects the forest that is behind, and also protects the village that is next to the city of Marpuy. And so we have to do this. It's important work.
And during an important window, as a pause in windy weather slows the fire down ahead of prolonged hot weather. This should help the firefighters. Around 90 of them have been injured, prompting this show of support from the French president.
I know this has affected everybody, the families, and we will be there. It's difficult because we are faced with a never-seen-before fire. We have a situation today which is the most difficult we have ever measured since the Second World War.
And for a monster this big, you need a weapon in the sky as well. French airspace now home to water bombers, some from the European Union, including 3 specialist pilots from Sweden. Their boss describes the heat in the cockpit.
Both the scooping and when they go into the fire sites is really intense for their focus, and they are going up and down. There is a lot of turbulence, and of course then is the heat. Sometimes it can reach even hotter when on the ground. So being in that kind of hot conditions for several hours is tough.
There we go, planes in the sky. They're dumping water to try and dampen this ground. This is Cap Ferret. The fire has swept through here. You can see just how much of it is blackened and charred. And still, there are parts of this place that are smouldering. That is how hot it is. The smoke has clearly moved away from the skies. That means the sun can come straight through and heat up this ground. And that's really dangerous ahead of tomorrow's heat wave.
With temperatures forecast to hit 32 degrees, even on this land that's destroyed, there's serious risk of reignition.
And Sadia joins us live now from Gironde. And Sadia, I'm just going to pick up on what you were just saying there, because of course the temperatures are set to rise again, so the risk continues.
Yeah, that is the main concern here, that heat wave that is impending, that everybody is anticipating. Where I am standing right now, we've just been asked to withdraw. That is the front of the fire, just over there, where firefighters are tackling that blaze. You can see the sky is quite red. Sunset was about 40 minutes ago now, I think. And we've seen in the last few minutes fire trucks whizzing along to get close up to there. But it's not just firefighters who are involved in this fight. We've also seen local farmers. Every time we see fire trucks moving, we also see behind them smaller pickup trucks of farmers who are also taking part in all of that. And I think we've got more vehicles coming up now. All of this part of this massive effort, because this is a huge fire. It has already burnt land 4 times the size of Paris, and it is continuing to rage. Yes, it has sort of changed directions from going towards Bordeaux, which was a real threat over the weekend, but it is still a massive threat. And you saw in my piece there all of the different things they're doing, because today a little bit of a lull in the weather that allowed them to step in to try and further contain this fire. But really, the ground is still really hot. You may be able to see in the dark, the ground is smouldering, not just here, but dotted around here. The fire has just swept through this area that I'm standing in. Everything on the ground is just charred and blackened. The trees are completely burnt. And there is still a lot of heat coming out of this fire. And there we go, another vehicle. And we can hear some shouts as they go there to meet up with the rest of the team who, in this part, are tackling that blaze. And a reminder that this is just one part of what is an enormous fire. It is being tackled from all different directions. We've driven around today in so much space where we've seen pockets of work being done, farmers, but also the fire and rescue service, and also the international teams who are here to, drop water and dampen the ground, all in anticipation of tomorrow's heat wave.
Sadia, thank you so much for all of your reporting there. Well, as you've just been hearing, the impending heat wave is a big concern, as it could make the hot and dry conditions that fuel the flames even worse. Temperatures are expected to hit 38 degrees in the south of France and 39 degrees near Madrid within the next 48 hours. The Italian islands of Sicily and Sardinia and the southern region of Puglia are also grappling with the wildfire emergency, with towns, hospitals and infrastructure under threat. Spain's weather service has warned high temperatures, winds and low humidity will pose an extraordinary level of danger. Our correspondent Connor Gillies saw the devastation at a campsite in the town of Avila.
This is all that's left of a holiday campsite here in the Spanish mountains above Madrid. Absolutely destroyed. Look, a children's bike is all that's left behind here. The height of the summer holidays. And imagine the horror, the terror of these people as the flames were encircling this place in what has been Spain's biggest wildfire on record. Roofs completely caved in. Look over here, for example, bunk beds that have been destroyed by the weight of a roof, barbecues, air conditioning units as well, as far as we can see down there. People literally grabbing what they could and getting out of here immediately. We met Maria, the owner. She came back here to survey the scene, and look what is left. She tells a tale that's terrifying.
When we left here on the boat, we went elsewhere as they told us helicopters and planes were going to come. We went to a place that had no phone signal to be picked up. When we saw that no one came, we rowed elsewhere to get signal so we could ring. When we rowed, we saw that it was starting to burn here.
How does it feel returning to this?
I feel awful coming back here. I feel powerless. No one has told us anything. No one is helping us. We don't know anything about what's going on. It was really hard to set up this business. It has taken us 11 years to get here.
This campsite in this community may have lost everything, but people all around are watching, praying, hoping that they're not next.
Connor Gillies reporting there. Well, let's speak now to Jerome Steff, the Mayor of Cestas, a town just south of Bordeaux. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for joining us here on the programme. If you could just give us a sense of the situation in Cestas tonight.
The situation in Cestas tonight, first, all our citizens, all our residents, our 17,000 residents were evacuated 2 days ago in the middle of the night, including our elderly citizens and people with reduced mobility, because the fire approached 2 days ago and hit our town. Yesterday, we put all our energy into creating a protective fire break with the help of our local forestry cooperative and several forestry contracting companies. But it was very difficult because the fire is so enormous. Happily, during the last night, we caught a weather break with dropping winds, lower temperature, and happily some rainfall. And combined with the firefighters' efforts, it helped to stabilize the fire. So at the present time, it seems, we have to be very precise. I don't say the fire is under control just near our city. It seems to be under control because...
As you say, it seems to be under control for now, yeah. But there is great concern that this is going to continue to pose a massive risk and something you have to deal with not just for weeks, but there are reports that for months to come.
Yeah, because, for example, tomorrow normally winds should change and we will get a very high temperature. In 2 days, for example, we will get more than 41 degrees. And it's so complex. And this fire is so enormous. When you think you won a battle, just 1 day or sometimes just 2 hours after, it becomes more and more stronger. And it becomes so enormous. It's something we have never seen in France. I think this is a fire of the century.
Yeah, how are your firefighters, the local community, dealing with this? Do you have the resources you need to tackle this?
For our citizens?
Yes, I mean, your firefighters as well as the local community. I mean, you say it's under control for now, but do you have the resources you need?
With this kind of situation, we never get all the necessary resources. For example, today we get 2,700 firefighters, we get 18 airplanes, and we get 1,500 military people. It appears quite enormous as resources, but against this kind of fire, it's never enough. So we try to get more and more resources, but each time we put more and more men, the fire becomes more and more strong. So the struggle is so unequal.
You talked about the thousands of people being evacuated from their homes. Where are they going? Are they going into schools and evacuation centres away from the blaze?
In the first time, they all went in an evacuation centre near Bordeaux. But after 2 days, there were so many people because in our area, it's over more than 200,000 people who were evacuated. So you understand that we had to display all these people in many different evacuation centers. And I don't speak about the citizen with reduced mobility. We had to find some places in hospitals and so on. So it was so. And as I get some citizen in Bordeaux, I get other in Toulouse, in Pau, which are 200 kilometers far from my own city, for example.
And just finally, what is your greatest concern in this moment?
The greatest concern is to build a barrier in the creation of protective fire break, because we know that the fire will come back. So we have to prepare the next struggle against this fire. So the main aim of today and tomorrow is to get a benefit from the actual condition, to work the more efficiently as possible to build these fire breaks. Just one example, yesterday we created a 15-kilometer fire break. So this is an enormous work, but this is absolutely necessary. And unhappily, we absolutely don't know if it will be enough.
Mayor Staff, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
You're welcome.
Let's focus more now on the conditions that are fanning the flames. Here's our Science and Technology editor, Tom Clark.
After the hottest June on record in Europe, continued heat waves through July and a wet spring feeding vegetation growth, Europe's facing a fire season like it's never seen before, with features it's never seen before, like fire clouds, and I'll come on to those in a moment. But first, this is the situation, according to the latest satellite data of fires across the continent, pretty much everywhere. The week 15th to the 22nd of July saw the greatest area burned for any July week on record for the EU. But the hottest of the hotspots, of course, are those fires in France and Spain. Let's go to Spain first. And that wildfire in the Sierra Oeste, here west of Madrid, the largest Spain has ever seen, forcing the evacuation of 100,000 people. Conditions overnight have actually made this fire much easier to manage. Authorities now saying they're confident they might be able to bring it under control, but they're still watching a developing fire in eastern Spain near the city of Valencia, and we've got further heat waves, 40-degree temperatures coming later in the week. But the current emergency really is in the Gironde region of France. Let's zip over there. And this is the Gironde wildfire, which is close to the largest France has ever seen as well. Conditions, again, a bit favourable there, but let's see how this fire evolved. And it shows you how important the role of the winds will be. But look at how it developed there, spreading across towards Cap Ferret when it threatened to cut people off on that peninsula, led to that very large evacuation of 200,000 people, and then started spreading further to the east. And behind all of this, of course, wind is a big factor. Here are the winds currently moving further in a northerly direction, from the north in a southerly direction, changing the dynamics of those winds. And that's really what firefighters are dealing with here. Whether if there's fuel there, it's the winds that largely dictate how these fires spread. There have been high winds, they've had some reprieve, but again, higher temperatures coming. How unprecedented? Europe deals with these fires every year. It's not a new phenomenon. Let's talk about that wind direction first. You've got Madrid here, the metropolitan area. The smoke from that wildfire in the Sierra Oeste, you can really see the scale compared to the size of the metropolitan area of Madrid there. And again, that smoke being blown in a southerly direction now. Over in France, a satellite image from over the weekend showed, yes, that wind taking the smoke out over the ocean, but now that wind shifted towards the east, bringing that smoke and the fire with it, threatening the city of Bordeaux, only 7 miles from the fire front now, but also taking that smoke into the city where it can present real problems to people with asthma or other breathing conditions, hence the need for face masks being given out by the French authorities. The situation in France reveals that they have seen already breaking all records for the not just the number of fires that they record compared to average, but also the extent of wildfires as well, the amount of area burned. And the other thing they're seeing in France, which has complicated the efforts to fight it, are something called pyrocumulonimbus. That's a fire cloud. These have only really been documented before in very intense wildfires in North America and in Australia. And what's happening here is the heat generated by that intense wildfire, fueled by forest in this Gironde area, is taking hot air high into the atmosphere, up to 9 kilometres high, drawing winds in below it and creating very similar conditions that you see during a thunderstorm. Those winds can essentially create the fire's own weather system, making them very hard to predict and manage. But they can also, if it gets intense enough, cause lightning strikes, dry lightning, no rain, which is the downside here, but that lightning can cause subsequent fires. That's something authorities in France haven't seen before. The scale of this fire, something they haven't dealt with in recent history, and fits very much in the models that climate scientists put out for what is still the fastest warming continent on the planet, Europe, right now.
That was Tom Clark reporting there. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. Actually, we're going to go to our next guest, Professor Martin Worcester, who leads the Earth Observation and Wildfire Research Group at King's College London. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on the programme. I mean, we've been hearing some quite frightening accounts from the mayor of a town in France, some residents in Spain, some more residents in France. This is a terrifying time, and we sort of, are seeing the beginning of this because, of course, there is going to be a major heat wave in the middle of this week as well.
Yes, I mean, these fires are obviously really extremely worrying and extremely large, but actually last year there was fires that were burned even a larger area across Europe. So this is not something that Europe has not seen before. They're just in different places.
And are we going to see this as the new normal? Each year it's likely to get hotter and more severe.
Yeah, well, climate change is obviously slowly making places warmer and drier in some ways, and that makes the landscape more flammable. And you can see that in many places around the world, including in Europe. So the potential for extreme fires is growing. That doesn't mean to say that they will be extreme. You need, obviously, sources of ignition. And so that is something to control. And also there's the kind of fuel management issues. So we've heard that people are creating large fire breaks now, but actually it's possible that different ways of managing the land, to lighting, for example, smaller, low intensity, patchier burns early in the fire season, regularly, routinely, can kind of break up the landscape. And when fires do occur, then they won't be able to access as much vegetation and cause the kind of extreme events that we're seeing so easily.
Yes.
So a policy of fire suppression is not necessarily the right one.
Yes, I know in Australia, for example, they do a lot of backburning in the fire seasons in preparation for these sorts of things that take place. So, going forward, how can these communities, and you talk there about the backburning, how can they actually prepare if this, might be what we see on an ongoing basis in the future? I know you say that that might not be the case, but it certainly does feel like each year the climate does get hotter and warmer, and we're seeing more of these rather than less.
Yes, I mean, I think there's no doubt that the climate is making the landscape more flammable, so you need to understand how you manage the land in order to try to prevent the extreme fires that we're seeing at the moment. You can't prevent all fires. They're a natural phenomena, and in Mediterranean-type environments, the landscape has evolved to have fire within it, so you're not going to be able to prevent fires. So you need to manage the land, use things like prescribed burning to manage the amount of dead fuel on landscapes, for example, to make it less likely that fires can become as extreme as they are at the moment. There's been a policy over many years of fire suppression, complete sort of fire suppression in countries, that basically doesn't really work, because ultimately fires will occur, and if there's all the fuel built up from years and years of fire suppression, then the fire will be able to become more extreme more easily. So managing landscapes for the amount of fuel that there is on them is one way that you can be at the enhanced preparedness.
And how do these conditions impact the overall landscape and earth of these places? And then, you know, what kind of long-term implications can it have on the kind of crops that grow there, and you know, other products, and sort of, you know, what would normally be on perhaps a lot of this farmland, for example?
Well, I suppose that firstly, fires are a natural phenomenon, like I said, and in this kind of, you know, in Mediterranean environments, for example, fires are present naturally on the landscape, and in places like the boreal forest of Canada, there are trees that only reproduce after intense fires. So you wouldn't want to completely necessarily exclude fire from those kind of places, because ecologically it's important to have it. I mean, vegetation recovers after fire. It's not as though it is barren for decades. You will soon see, as soon as rain comes, green shoots, and the ash actually fertilizes the soil a bit. So it's very much that fire is, you know, not the dead end. I mean, things can grow after it, but obviously it takes a long time to recover a forest, for example. Yeah.
Professor Martin Worcester, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you very much.
And coming up next on The World with me, Yalda Hakim, we'll head to the West Bank, where escalating settler violence is pushing Palestinians to breaking point.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory
to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was accused by senior Israeli generals of stoking conflict in the West Bank ahead of a closely contested election. Violence escalated this weekend after Israeli forces raided at least 20 towns and villages. Several homes were demolished and dozens of people detained. Officials say 2 mosques were set on fire in an apparent Israeli settler attack yesterday. That's after 2 Israeli soldiers and 4 Palestinians were killed. Israel's military insists this is all part of a counter-terrorism operation and say more than 130 arrests have been made. According to the United Nations, 1,114 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since October the 7th, mainly by Israeli forces. Well, I've been hearing from the Deputy Director of Advocacy and Campaigns at Medical Aid for Palestinians, Asil Beidoun.
As Medical Aid for Palestinians, we have medical teams on the ground, and we are in close communications with the communities. And I know that communities in and around Nablus are facing existentialist threat amid the escalating state-backed mass settler attacks. The Palestinians there are saying that it's part of the ethnic cleansing campaign that the Israeli military are conducting. You know, over the past several days, especially during the weekend, settlers have killed and injured dozens of Palestinians, and they have enforced a lockdown over Nablus governorate, and the Israeli army stormed Nablus Specialized Hospital, where ambulances have been blocked from reaching the Palestinians. It has been a really devastating days on Palestinians in the north. They have been prevented from reaching hospitals, they have been prevented from freedom of movement, and they were really intimidated by the intensity of settler attacks. You know, in 2026, the rate is 6 attacks per day, according to the UN.
So that is, you know, an increase compared to the previous year. Are the local Palestinians, the communities living there, concerned that this is just going to continue to get worse?
As I said, they think it's an existentialist times at the moment. The intensity of the settler attacks and the way they are backed by the Israeli army says it's part of removing them from their villages. These are Palestinians who are unarmed, and they have to deal with the amount of weapons and settler violence alone. And they're saying that they're really scared that at some point they'll either be killed or they have to find another place to live in. Settlers are doing the intimidation, the attacks on a daily basis, where Palestinians are really left with no choice.
When the violence erupts and flares up the way that we saw at the weekend, what sort of impact does it have on other facilities, the health facility, for example, which you represent? Just talk us through the kind of pressure and the kind of impact it has on the work that you do on the ground.
Just let me put you in the right context. Since 2023, Israeli state has installed more than 1,000 barriers, including checkpoints, iron gates, mud barriers, which prevented the movement of Palestinians, including prevention of access to healthcare. We're talking about restrictive access to hospitals, and the ambulances and people in need for urgent care are stuck in checkpoints for hours, and the Israeli army do not think of Palestinians as human beings who may need urgent care, and they will leave them at the checkpoint.
We know that hundreds of IDF generals and colonels have written a letter. They're urging President Trump to focus on the situation in the West Bank and to put pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to change course because they're increasingly concerned about the settler violence that's taking place in the West Bank. Is there any hope that that letter or attention from the US president may change the situation on the ground?
For us Palestinians, we feel that we have been left alone to deal with the atrocity crimes that have been committed by the Israeli army and settlers. And we are just facing this ethnic cleansing campaign. And any letter that can put any pressure on Trump or on Netanyahu, we don't know if we can say we're hopeful, but something should be done. The impunity cannot continue the way it is. What's left? Are we supposed to just leave? Where should we go? So we hope that governments will no longer be complicit in these atrocity crimes and actually do something, put pressure on the Israeli government to uphold international law and hold their army and their settlers, because they're backed by the state, accountable against all these attacks against Palestinians.
What expectations do you have from the international community, governments around the world, the government here in the UK?
Well, I cannot be pessimistic. I can say that the UK government did baby steps, but in the face of a genocide in Gaza and an apartheid system in the West Bank, they're not enough. There's a lot of leverage, especially in the UK government, that they can put more pressure on Israel. They can show them that they're no longer complicit. Especially now that there's a change in the UK government, I see an opportunity where the UK government can recognize the amount of pressure and the amount of advocacy they can do for the Israeli government to stop violating international law and make sure that Palestinians have the right to live and to live with dignity.
That was Asil Beydoun speaking to me earlier. I'm joined now by Professor Yossi Mekelberg, Senior Consulting Fellow for Chatham House's Middle East and North Africa Programme. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. We're listening there to one Palestinian who works in the medical field. But this is something that has been ongoing for the last few years. And frankly, the world has been focused on Gaza and ignoring what's been going on in the West Bank, which has just been flaring up and getting worse and worse.
Good evening. This is reaching a boiling point right now, but nothing is new in this sense. You know, they used to call it settler violence. This is terrorism because there is a political aim to this, to make the life of Palestinians impossible. We know that there are members of government right now in the cabinet, the Ben-Gvir, the Smotrich of this cabinet, that they want to annex the West Bank and with minimum Palestinians, either make them want to leave, what they call voluntary migration, which is never voluntary, or just that they will comply whatever the wish of the settlers. We'll see taking more land, we see the violence, burning cars, cutting olive trees, entering into villages, shooting, some cases killing, and we saw the incident on Friday. They were unfortunately killing on both sides there, but at the end of the day, the settlers know when they say, we just go, for a trip to see the place, they know that they create provocation. They want to show that they are the masters of this place, and the Palestinians should abide whatever they wish.
How long before the problem in the West Bank becomes an East Bank problem, and suddenly it is a confrontation between Jordan and Israel?
I mean, you never know, but the Jordanians obviously look at it and they are worried. They're worried what's happened in Jerusalem. When Israel decide on building an E1, will completely disconnect between East Jerusalem and the West Bank, which for all means and purposes mean no viable Palestinian state. They look at it and say, this might spill over also to Jordan. And there is hardly any talks between Jordan and Israel, how to diffuse it. The Israeli government, because the Israeli prime minister is a weak prime minister right now. A few months before election, he depends on the most extreme element in the Israeli society, most extreme elements among the settlers, because let's be clear, it's not all the settlers. It's a minority, but too big of a minority that is resorting to this ideology and resort to this kind of violence.
And they feel empowered because they have the backing of the likes of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir.
Completely. So they put Smotrich in the defense ministry. He's not the defense minister, but he's also in the defense ministry in charge of running the civil administration. And Ben-Gvir in charge of the police, which include the border guard, that are involved deeply in what happened in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and of course they feel empowered. The message down to the soldiers is, don't stop the settlers. It's abnormal situation when the military or the police escort the perpetrator of a crime to protect them from the victims. Where have you heard of something like this? And this has to stop because it happened with complete impunity.
And now increasingly we're seeing anger and frustration from the Israeli security establishment and the military establishment. They're saying enough is enough. Something needs to be done. They've written a letter to Donald Trump. Do you think Donald Trump is going to put pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu or try and intervene? Do you think he understands how big a problem it is if the situation in the West Bank escalates?
Honestly, I don't think he understands the West Bank can be the next big flare-up. And Netanyahu is visiting the United States. There are going to be a visit between. There's going to be a visit tomorrow and a meeting between the two. And I think Netanyahu will try to deflect, all the time deflect and talk only about Iran. What to do with Iran, nuclear, missiles, Strait of Hormuz, try to push the United States to take a more hawkish stand on it, and will try to deflect from the West Bank. Trump is not a person of details. Unless it really explodes, he probably won't address it. I hope there are people around, at least from time to time, tell him that if this flare up, it can flare up also other places and affect other allies of the United States in the region. It affects what is so important for Trump, which is the Abraham Accords. And if there is a full third intifada, this is going to affect it.
And in the past, we have seen the UAE, for example, say that they're concerned about the situation in the West Bank and that it could affect the Abraham Accords. And then Trump has acted. But it has required extreme positions from the Arab allies for him to actually pay attention.
Yes, but at the same time, we would like to see, and we know it's for years now, normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel and in other Gulf countries, and they hold back, because they go back to the Arab Peace Initiative, actually initiated by Saudi Arabia back in 2002, say, yes, we would like to normalize relations with Israel, but the Palestinian issue should come first, should be resolved first, in a just and fair way. If both sides agree on it, then we'll normalize relations with Israel. The Abraham Accords reverse it, and say normalization, and then see what happened with the Palestinian issue, and see what has happened in the last 3 years. It led to a disaster.
We're seeing increasingly there is more and more violence in the West Bank, and it hasn't been focused on at all. What is your biggest concern right now of how far this can go?
I think especially now with election time, the settler, they also read opinion polls, and the coalition is much behind the opposition right now. So they might think we have only a few months to push the agenda, actually to cause an explosion in the West Bank. And this might lead, to bloodshed, and as a result, the voters for the right will go back and vote for Likud and even the more extreme right-wing parties, or even delay the election. So they provoke at the best of times. They probably will provoke even worse. And it's not that necessarily people that provoke should react to this provocation. Maybe it will be better to hold fire until the election, but this provocation can lead, because the Palestinians, we have to look, the underlying issue is the occupation and the oppression. This is coming on top, even worse, and already nearly 60 years of occupation without dealing with the core issue of going to Palestinian self-determination, political rights, human rights, and security to everyone, both for Israel and the Palestinians living side by side.
I have about a minute to go, but I want to know where you think this leaves Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you think this moment, this escalation, is to his benefit?
I doubt it, unless it goes to say that he can declare emergency. Because everyone, when you mention the letter, which is just actually middle-rank officers that deal with the out, and they said this can really explode in Israel's face, both what happened in the West Bank, but also make even worse relations with the world. I think we see from public opinion polls, is not doing well. He still can maintain his base, but it's still not strong enough for him, you know, for the opposition to form a coalition. And something to say about the opposition, their refusal basically to form a government with the Arab parties that represent the Palestinian citizens of Israel stops them actually from forming the next government.
Yossi Mekelberg, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Still to come on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Volodymyr Zelensky becomes Andy Burnham's first international visitor since he became PM, as he hosted the Ukrainian president at a naval base in Portsmouth.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Andy Burnham welcomed his first world leader in the UK this afternoon, Volodymyr Zelensky. The new Prime Minister said it was no accident that he'd invited the Ukrainian president, insisting it sends a very clear message of support.
Volodymyr, you are the first leader I have welcomed in person since taking office, and that is no accident. It is intended to send a very clear message. We are with Ukraine 100%. I am personally with you 100%, Mr. President, and I will honour every commitment this country has made to Ukraine in full.
Our relationship with the UK is stronger than ever, and I thank Andy for his commitment to this partnership and for giving so much attention to defence and to our security.
Well, the two leaders standing side by side today. Ukraine's president has also been speaking to our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey about his hopes of building a drone factory in the UK. Just have a listen.
We made a lot of things with Kir, and we need to continue, and also to have a new page in our relations. For example, drone deal, very important, I think, bilaterally. I want to build big factory in Britain and of new technologies and share with our partners. And of course, we're ready to share all our experience with UK, and I hope that UK will do the same. So we need to make this drone deal be very strong. I count on it, and also I count when we will speak. I will say about not only about our needs, how we see our bilateral relations further. What can we do together to strengthen Ukraine and UK.
And you can hear more of Stuart's interview with the Ukrainian president by scanning the QR code on our screen now. Now, the German Chancellor says there are questions to be answered about how an attacker was able to target a Pride festival in Berlin. After the initial shock, people are becoming increasingly angry after it emerged that the suspect was known to police. Well, let's go straight to our correspondent Molly Malone, who joins us live from Berlin. And Molly, more details are emerging about the suspect's criminal record.
Yeah, that's right, Yalda. And as you say, the moods and the conversation here today very much shifting from a city that has been in immediate shock to one with some serious questions, because this was an attacker shot and killed yesterday by the police here, but that was very much known to the police, known to the authorities, a 21-year-old German citizen with Islamist connections, a man that had tried to join ISIS, to join the Islamic State. He travelled to Lebanon and he'd been radicalised, and this bit's important. He'd been serving a suspended sentence for preparing a serious act of violence, but under German law, he'd been treated as a juvenile. He was 20 at the time when he was issued that suspended sentence. And that is something where I think we could see some change. That is where the political pressure is coming, with the government today promising to look at tightening laws for sentencing minors, and all of that feeding into what many people have been saying here today. Could this attack have been prevented? Should the authorities, should the police have seen this attacker coming? And could this attack be used by the far right to galvanise political momentum? Here's a flavour of what some of those people have been saying today.
I was there with friends. For luck, I went to come to home earlier, and then I saw this message from a friend, and it was horrible, terrible.
I mean, the thing is, it was deeply political, but it was deeply homophobic. It's a queer politics, and people are making it a racist issue. People are jumping on it who've never stood for the queer people at all, speaking for queer people, and it's all just gross. And for the fact of police, I was at a table where there were so many police officers. I do find it incredible that somehow a car got through here.
If that's the police investigation, if that's how people are feeling, there is, of course, the raw shock and immediacy here. We saw yesterday people laying flowers, laying candles, hugging each other, crying. And I have to say, having watched them and watched them do the same today, the emotion felt just as raw, because they were remembering the victims of this attack. We learnt today that the woman that was killed was a Polish citizen. She'd come to Berlin with her daughter. She'd gone to the Pride event with her daughter. We know as well that 29 other people were injured in this attack, one of them in intensive care with stab wounds. The questions, the scrutiny is, of course, about those people.
Molly, thank you so much. They are the manosphere influencers who've been accused of rape, sex trafficking and child pornography. Today, Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan have been told by a judge in Miami that they must remain in jail at least 2 more weeks until their next hearing. The brothers, both former professional kickboxers with dual US and UK citizenship, have millions of social media followers and are vocal supporters of US President Donald Trump. They're fighting extradition to the UK, where they face new charges from 4 new accusers. Well, that's it for tonight and from me and the team. Tomorrow, Donald Trump meets the Israeli Prime Minister and the Ukrainian President at the White House. We're following all of those developments very closely, so do stay with us and join us again on The World. But the wrap will be on next with Barbara. Goodbye.